All right, so I finally got around to going through all of my expenses, or most of them. I tried to do as good of a job as I could. It did get a little gray in certain areas, and I'll kind of walk through that. So this video is going to be pretty much all about my expenses for my entire trip. And there'll be a little bit of fluff in there, which I'll explain. But I did put almost everything on credit cards. So that was the hard part. I had two different credit cards that I used, one for international because it didn't charge me any fees, and then the other for the US because my cash back on gas prices was better. So for that reason, I had to go through every single line item, and I'll give you an example of what that looks like over here. And then I had to figure out how detailed I was going to get in this, or how detailed I could, because the problem with looking at your credit card expenses is that sometimes the places of business, the names that they call them, don't really add up with whether or not was that a gas purchase, was that maybe some food that I stopped for somewhere. Also, was that a restaurant, and did I not remember eating somewhere, or was that gas? So in the end, it all should add up to the grand total number for the most part, with a little bit of plus or minus fluff in there. So anyway, that's what this video is going to be about. I do actually have cue cards because there's quite a bit of information here that I want to go over. I didn't want to just throw out a grand total number, which I'm going to do at the beginning. I'm not going to make you wait to the end, and then I'll break it down. And for anybody that's interested, you can hear about, certain things that I included, certain things that I paid money for. And the idea of this is, one, to give you an idea of what my trip costs, what this entire thing cost me as a simple or practical overlander, and then maybe it'll also, too, give you an idea of some things that maybe you didn't consider that you need to prepare for, or maybe set money aside for, or just put in the budget. So, like I said, I got to a somewhat detailed level, but only as much as I possibly could without really just pulling numbers out of thin air. I want to make it clear, a couple of disclaimers, that does not include food that I brought with me. It doesn't include any maintenance that I did to this before the trip, including like the new tires that I put on, any pre-travel purchases that I made, and any car insurance. So this is just what I spent from the time that I left this garage to the time that I came back to it over the course of just over 7 months. So with that being said, the total amount that I could come up with was $12,260. A bit less actually than I thought it would be, considering some of that, or a few $1,000s, a couple of $1,000s, is parts and repairs. But if you break that down into 7 months, that's $1,750 a month. But since I did sit in North Dakota for 6 weeks waiting to work, and then while I was working, I broke it down by 6 months, and it comes out to $2,045 a month. So that's the grand total. Now I'm going to break it all down for you and give you what I could come up with as far as different categories go. The first one is going to be food and miscellaneous. So this is my grocery store, my Walmart purchases, things like that where my main goal was probably to buy food to eat while I was in the Jeep. This does not include eating out at restaurants, fast food, drinks, or anything like that. So this got a little squirrely because when you look at a credit card statement, it'll just say Walmart. I don't know how much of that was food. In that purchase, did I buy oil and a filter? Did I buy my radiator fluid? So when I replaced some of the radiator fluid in this, did I buy wet wipes, laundry detergent, all things like that? So because of that, I had to use a factor number, a percentage of what was food and what was other stuff. But for everything all in, it came out to $1,148, or for 7 months, $164 a month. So if I was to look at this for just snacks, food, drinks, I'm guessing about 70% of that was food. So that brings it down to $804, which is just over $100 a month for food. And like I said, that goes through looking through all the statements, and that's your great grocery stores and Walmarts, like I said earlier. Eating out at restaurants, so I did not eat out hardly at all when I was by myself. I was always usually with somebody else, so it was around friends or with my girlfriend or people that I met while I was out on the road. And that came out to $506. That, because of, my cat is thinking that I'm talking to him. So that is got to come with a little bit of fluff. If I didn't cover the number here, I covered it probably in the gas because I couldn't make out what was what. But the $506 that I spent on eating out, that included, visiting my friend in Texas, visiting my other friend in California, my girlfriend coming out with me where I paid for some of our meals when we did eat out, and then also a couple of times when I decided to grab a burger or a drink for myself, which wasn't very often. And that also includes my fast food purchases where every now and then I'd swing into a McDonald's and get a couple of hamburgers or something, or a Burger King for chicken nuggets. So that comes out to $73 a month, which I think is pretty reasonable and probably far less than most people are going to do. I know a lot of overlanders, when they go into town, and I'd love to be able to do this, but eating out is a huge expense, and I'm trying to keep my costs down. But, I love hearing the stories when overlanders go, I went to this cool town or this out-of-the-way town, and I tried some of the local fare. And although I'd love to do that, it's not in the budget. But it is going to impact your overall budget for what you decide to do. I just opted not to eat out unless I was with somebody else. With the restaurant and the 70% of the food and miscellaneous, that came out to $1,310. Over 210 days, that came out to $6.25 a day. And I know that is probably pretty low by a lot of people's standards. I do eat a lot of garbage. I eat garbage here at home. I eat garbage on the road. I know I've said this in other videos, but I brought a lot of MREs with me. I eat canned soups. I eat ramen noodles, cup of noodle. I eat a lot of snacks, chips, things of that nature. I know it drives over the hill, over the mountain, crazy. John usually makes a comment about that, and he's the type of guy who also lives in his XJ. Check out his channel. And he actually cooks really well for himself, and it's awesome that he does that. It does add a lot more to the expenses, but if I don't do it at home, I'm not going to do it on the road. And for me, it really comes down to laziness as well. When I eat, I just want to get it over with. I don't want to prepare it. I don't want to make it and then have to clean up. I eat out of a pot or sometimes out of the can. So for me, it's a lifestyle choice. So your number is probably going to far exceed $6.25 a day. So definitely factor that into your budget and how healthy you think you're going to be eating or the type of food that you're going to be eating. Just budget for what you think you're going to need. I think my number is pretty low, so take that into consideration. How often are you going to eat out? How much food are you actually going to need to buy based on the type of meals that you're going to make? Things of that nature. So my number's probably relatively low compared to most. The next big thing is going to be car parts and cost and my shop repairs. So I'm going to break this into two sections. The car parts and costs are things that I needed to replace that I was able to myself or I tried to replace, as well as a few things that I bought for the vehicle for the overlanding trip. That number came to $1,390. To run through that really quick, and I don't know if my oil changes are in this number or in my food and miscellaneous, because I did buy that stuff at Walmart when I did oil changes. But that came out to about $125. The springs I replaced in California in my buddy's garage, that was $300. That was to do the rear leafs. Seals and fluids when I wanted to replace my rear axle shaft but ended up not being able to. That was $25 for those. I replaced the shocks. I should have done that before I left, and that was $356. AC compressor finally went out on me in Arizona, so I replaced that out in the desert for $240. Could have been less, but I was in a pinch and I needed to get my part at the AutoZone rather than through Rock Auto or somebody. I balanced a tire at some point for $16. I needed a new battery towards the end of my trip, which solved a few problems that I was having. That was $105. And then Keith, thanks for helping me change the U-joints in my rear drive shaft. I should have done that before I left. That was my own fault as well. That ended up being about $21 for the U-joints. And then some miscellaneous parts. My sway bar link busted, the bolt busted off. I had to buy new bolts and backup bolts, and then the drill bits to back out the old bolt, and other miscellaneous hardware here and there that came out to like 40 or 50 bucks. Then when I was at Overland West, I bought Go treads, which were $110. I think I'm going to get a lot of use out of those. I do use them for leveling, and then they'll be good for getting me out of any kind of sliding situation in snow, mud, or dirt or whatever. Bungee cords, the Perfect Bungee. Not sponsored by them, but I think it's an amazing product. I replaced my ratchets and my black bungee cords up on the roof, so that cost me $60 for all the ones that I bought. I needed an electric heater when I was sitting in North Dakota. That was $30 to have in the back of the cab. I had to replace my crappy Garmin GPS with another crappy Garmin GPS, and that was $93. And then I bought a small compact grease gun with the grease, and that was like $18. So again, for all that stuff, it came to $1,390. Shop repairs. So when I couldn't do the repairs myself, well, actually, if I was here, I would have been able to do them. But when I had to replace my rear axle shaft, the bearing had totally chewed up the axle shaft. Kind of blame myself because I put on an aftermarket shaft. So for a new axle shaft, 2 new seals to do both sides, 2 new bearings to do both sides. Those were Timken bearings, and for the actual labor, it was $760. I did that at Mark's Auto in Rapid City, South Dakota, and he did a good job for me. I think it's a fair price for what he did, and completely cleaned out the whole thing. It was full of glitter because the axle shaft had just shed so much metal in tiny, fine little particles. So that was a big expense. And then when I was in Calgary, I went to the broken axle, and I needed a new hub, and they removed the broken off bolt from when I removed the front drive shaft the first time, thinking that might be the problem. So I brought it in for them to diagnose. It was the one hub, I think it was on the left here, and they replaced it and then also removed that bolt. And when that was converted to US dollars, that came out to $391. So total for shop repairs came out to $1,150. So if you add in all the parts that I did, all the things that I purchased for the vehicle, and the shop repairs, it came out to $2,540. Most of that, well, some of it was things that I just bought because I wanted them. But, you know, to be honest, most of this was my own laziness and stupidity. I'll just say that outright. I wouldn't have needed to replace the U-joints had I done it before I left. I would not have needed to replace the springs or the shocks if I had done it before I left. I knew I should have done them, but I didn't. AC compressor, that just went. But I should have probably replaced that since I have no idea when that was replaced the first time or the last time. And other than the battery, I didn't expect to go. But even the axle shaft, which was my biggest expense, I put on aftermarket shafts. I probably wouldn't have had that problem if I kept the originals on. I've got another aftermarket one in there. I hope it holds up. But I still do have the originals, which I'll decide what I'm going to do with those in the future. So anyway, I digress. But I'm not going to blame a lot of these costs on this vehicle. I'm going to blame myself. So that's just the way it goes. So other smaller expenses, laundry. I think my laundry bill is lower than a lot of people. I ended up staying at Hampton Inn properties or Hilton Honors properties. So a lot of Hampton Inns, I think every now and then Homewood Suites, because it was free for me. So that was no cost at all. I didn't even pay taxes for that. I had a ton of points from my job before I quit. So laundry only came out to about $100. When I stayed at those hotels, the laundry fees were pretty cheap. And when I stayed in North Dakota and for 6-7 weeks, those laundry fees were relatively cheap. The only time I had to go to a laundromat was probably 2 to 3 times, an actual laundromat, and those prices are higher, definitely. So depending on your campground or wherever you stay or whatever you're doing, I think $100 over 7 months is very reasonable, but I think you could probably easily double that for yourself. Showers, only $10 to $20 because, again, I was staying at free hotels, so I would shower when I was there. showered for free at the campground in North Dakota, and then I only had to pay for showers for a few times when I was in Canada. Actually, it was the only time I didn't have access to a hotel. And I maybe didn't shower as frequently as I should have. I don't think I ever stunk, but maybe anybody that met me can tell me if I did or not. But I wiped down with wet wipes every night and washed my hair out the back of the vehicle. So, you know, I only showered when I absolutely needed to, which was more often in the summer, obviously, especially when I was hiking. And then camping fees. My philosophy is I don't pay to sleep. I have a bed in the back of this, and I will do whatever I can to not pay to sleep. So rest stops on the side of the road, out in the middle of nowhere, which was a priority for me and my preference. But I did pay for some campsites when I met over the hill, over the mountain, John, and then when I met Mike from Rocky Mountain Hobo. Both those guys have Jeep XJs like I do. I met them in Flagstaff before Overland West, and that was a $25 campsite. I stayed 2 nights in Banff because it was easier to stay there than drive in and out every time. It's a vast park, and to have to drive out of the park to sleep for free wouldn't have been worth it, but it was only $33 for 2 nights. My biggest expense was $95 in US at Tuck at the Arctic Ocean, worth every penny. I had a primo spot, woke up to the Arctic Ocean. I would have paid more than that, and I recommend anybody that goes up there, just stay the night, spend the $60 while you can on those campsites. I heard that they might be going away and that all campsites are going to be more inland and not right there on the shore. So definitely consider doing that. Car washes, I probably spent $30 to $40 washing off either the Dempster Highway mud, or after I was somewhere where it was snowy and there might have been salt on the roads, or just the general cleaning. But I didn't spend too much on that. And then there were, park passes and tolls. Like we went to Crazy Horse, which I don't recommend at all, the Crazy Horse Memorial. Go to a nice Native American museum if you really want to learn about Native Americans. And then the Whittier Tunnel in Alaska, $13, and then other miscellaneous park fees and things like that. I had a national park pass, which my sister and brother-in-law got me, so I got into all that for free. But there were a few parks here and there where I did pay either in cash or in a credit card. So I'm estimating that was probably between $75 and $150, depending. I know some of that cash in there I can't account for. So the total for that was about $300 to $350 for that type of stuff. Again, that's going to be completely dependent on how many places that you go and that you have to pay for. So, my monthly expenses, utilities, that was another one that I had to consider. So for anybody doing a trip like this, I strongly recommend a satellite phone. I had the Garmin InReach Mini. So for the setup fee, which was about $20, and then I paid $16 a month times 8. I'm just saying 8 months because I'm still paying for it. Came out to $154. Well worth it as a safety net. Highly recommend it. You can send text messages to people, preset text messages for free, and you can make SOS calls if you need them. So they're great for even hiking out in the middle of nowhere. $154 for that, like I said. And then Netflix. I could have canceled that, but I really wanted it to have movies and shows to download, so when I'm in the middle of nowhere and I'm not doing anything else, and before I get bored, I could watch something on Netflix that was downloaded, or watch Netflix when I had cell service. That's $14 a month times 8. I just put 8 in there. $112 for that. And then the biggest expense was my cell phone. When I bought my cell phone after I quit my job, I needed a phone because I was getting one through them, and I decided to put the cost of my iPhone 7 into the monthly bill because it was interest-free to do that, so it just made sense. So for that, plus an international plan which covered Canada and Mexico and unlimited data, I'm paying $113 times, I'm just saying 8 months. It came out to $904, but I really can't complain in the end for as much as I used it, both upload and download. I got my money's worth time and time again. But something that you want to consider based on your usage for it. When I was work camping, I noticed a lot of people who do this full time. This is their life, either in an RV or in a van. They've got flip phones or burner phones or something with very low usage, because this does add up. I mean, that's for 8 months, that's almost $1,000. 9 months, you're at $1,000 that you've got to work and make money for having unlimited data like I do. Even when I try to do this full time in the future, I'm probably going to keep it because it's an easy way to use it for just the YouTube videos and for watching stuff. So to me, it's worth the expense. To some, it may not be. Now the big one, which I'm sure a lot of people are very curious about, is gas. This was a pleasant surprise. I estimated $7,000 at the beginning of this trip for 20,000 miles. I really overestimated Canada and Alaska. And to be honest, even at the Arctic Ocean, gas isn't more expensive than it is in some parts of California. Thank God I don't live in California. Not that I would anyway, but still beautiful state in some parts. However, vastly overestimated my fuel costs. So even at 29,500 miles, I spent $6,200. I know that seems like a lot, but I estimated $7,000 at 20,000 miles. I checked and I double checked this, and that number even adds 5% to the number. The number I came up with was $59.10. I added 5% for $6,200. So that comes out to $885 a month. My biggest month, which makes sense, was $1,282 in August. And that was when I entered Canada. And I started, I was there with my girlfriend early on. And then I did the Alaska Highway. I did the Dempster Highway, 1,100 miles on a dirt road, some of it horrific as far as slow, muddy conditions, and all the way to the Arctic Ocean. And then that includes also going into Alaska and having to buy gas at Eagle or in Valdez, or places that are kind of off the beaten path. So $6,200, I can live with that, for $885 a month. Now keep in mind, I was on the move all the time. Unless I was staying at a friend's house, I never stayed somewhere more than 2 nights. And I was always driving. But I would take this road, that road. I think I did an extra couple hundred miles just in the heart of West Virginia because I thought it was pretty, and drove around the countryside. So that, I think, is a big number compared to maybe somebody else doing it and taking their time and not doing so much sightseeing like I did. You could definitely see almost as many of the cool places that I did and cut out 10,000 miles. I can't sit still, and I just wanted to see everything. So for that reason, 29,500 miles and $6,200 in gas. So in case you're curious, that comes out to 21 cents a mile. Then that leaves miscellaneous. These are things I can't account for, but I did buy a lot of decals for this Jeep. If I went somewhere that I really liked, I bought a decal. And I want to make it so that every decal has a story, maybe miscellaneous gifts here and there, and just unknown. So that I kind of just grouped all together, and that came out to $140. Not too bad, but like I said, give or take some of this, there's fluff in all of it because I didn't know where it went, but it went somewhere. So when I say $12,260, I think was the number, that's what it came to, and that includes my cash. I left here with $400, came back with $20, and then I also took out $100 and something for Canadian dollars, but I didn't come back with any of it, so I had to kind of like push that in there somewhere as well, but it is covered. So that's pretty much everything. I will digress a little bit and just talk about, my vehicle, and did my vehicle add to my cost or didn't it? I did spend $2,540 on repairs, but I blame a lot of that on me and not on this. I should have done better preventative maintenance, but towards the end I had too much to do, and or I got a little bit lazy. But just to give you an example that, I underestimated my miles per gallon. I'm guessing I had about 14 overall. And so if people are wondering, I get about 9 or 10 on trails and rough back roads, depending on how slow I got to go. And then, if I'm going between 45, 55, 60 miles an hour, I can get up to 18 miles a gallon on this thing, even fully loaded at 5,350 pounds. So even at 13 miles per gallon, if I was to get another vehicle that got me up to 26 miles per gallon, which I think is a stretch for a loaded overland vehicle, And so say I was able to increase my fuel efficiency by 100%. And then say I sold this for $5,000, which I think I'd be lucky to get even with all my upgrades. And then I bought another overland vehicle. I would stay away from new completely, but something that would be something I can depend on for 15 grand. Now I'm 10 grand in the hole. So just for fuel efficiency, I would have to burn through 7,700 gallons of fuel to even out on fuel mileage. And then that doesn't include all the costs of buying parts for this, having backup parts, doing all the preventative maintenance I'd want to do to it, adjusting it to the way I wanted it to be, setting it up for an overland vehicle, and then, you know, throw out all the parts that I have all around this garage that I have for backup for this because I, you know, saw it on sale or I know I'm going to need it in the future, like brakes and rotors and drums, and I've even got a new brake booster that I'm looking at to put in this because it's never been done. So, you know, it just doesn't pan out. And to be honest, I'm very, very happy with this vehicle. It serves my purpose as a practical person and as a simple overlander. I'm not going to get into all the reasons as to why, but I think it did relatively well, considering the fact that most of the stuff that I replaced on the rotor that broke should have been done by me to begin with. And had I done that, my bill would have been much less, and I would have been better off. But lessons learned. Now I am going to start getting into territory the longer I drive this where the stuff that I did replace 2 to 3 years ago will start needing to be replaced again, depending on what it is and how much I abuse this thing on trails. But again, it all comes into how I drive this thing. So, but that goes for any older vehicle. But 20-year-old XJ, I am very happy with it. I'm pleasantly surprised by some of these costs actually. And definitely do it all over again. So this is great information for me to use for future trips. I hope it was good information for you. Feel free to leave your comments about anything that I talked about, or anything that you just have a question about. Also about this vehicle, and even on my last little topic here about should I get something else. You don't agree with me, fine. Leave a comment and give me some kind of constructive feedback. But thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Thanks for all your comments. Thanks for all your support. And there's more videos to come. And I hope this mic worked out. I actually did half an hour of this video without the mic by accident, and then I had to put this back on and do it all over again. But I hope the sound quality is a little bit better. I noticed in my last video it was all over the place. I'm trying to make this a little bit better, even though this isn't a huge thing for me. I do like keeping people updated. I do like posting this on YouTube. I'm actually watching my videos in my living room on my big screen TV, and it's kind of interesting to see how it all went. But one of the things that I noticed, even though I'm not trying to get real high on the professional level of YouTube and try to keep it as simple as possible, I'm hoping the mic makes a difference. So I'm going to try to use it where I can, especially outside. The wind noise was atrocious. So I've got the little dead cat thing that also goes on this thing. But let me know about that as well. Do you appreciate the mic, or did it not make a difference? I'm kind of interested about that. To me, it doesn't really bother me one way or the other when I watch some YouTubers. I know that sometimes you just want to keep it simple, and I can really appreciate that, since I try to do that whenever I can. But anyway, this is what it's like without the mic. I think it does make a good difference, so I probably will continue to use it. I know this video is longer than some people thought it probably should be, but they can always fast forward it. And I kind of wanted to give more information in case anybody was curious about certain expenses, or maybe it might help somebody with things that they maybe overlooked. But for that reason, I decided to go into a bit more detail, a bit more explanation, and make the video longer rather than shorter. Like I said, you can always fast forward through it. Thanks again for watching. Really appreciate it, and talk to you next time.